Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being with us today for #CareerReady. Thank you to our alums. I try and get in the video somehow. We also try to make sure that we have our seats arranged properly. But we are dealing with sunshine, which is such a great problem to have, but we've tried to make it that everyone can see our guests. So my name is Faith Craycraft. I'm the director of the Graves Center. My colleagues, Stephanie Offman, who also works with me, and Olivia Coleman-Dunn, who works in alumni relations, is also here to say hello to our alumni. So just to kind of start out, we'll just go in the order in which I'm seeing you on my screen. So Jordan, we'll start with you, and then Rob, and then Cammie, just telling us a little bit about who you are, when you graduated from Georgetown, and what you're doing these days. So Jordan?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me, Faith. I'm excited to talk to everyone today and give you a little bit of background on my time at Georgetown and what I'm up to now. I am originally from Mount Sterling, Kentucky. I now live in Cincinnati. Was at Georgetown from 2008 through 2012. I am a financial planner at a company called Commas, as in the punctuation mark. We are a financial planning firm that offers financial planning services to the everyday person. So a lot of traditional financial planning firms will say, you have to have X millions of dollars to work with us. And we like to say that everyone has financial goals, but not everyone has millions of dollars. So our goal is to really just work with the everyday person to help them make progress towards their financial goals.
Great. Thanks, Jordan. Rob?
Okay, Rob Ruddick. I actually live in Georgetown, work in Lexington. Have been living in Georgetown for about 3 years after being out for quite a long time. So I'm back home with you guys. I was a communication arts major with a business administration minor, graduating in 1994. And after 22 glorious years in banking, I am now the vice president of business owner solutions at Wallace Hart Capital Management, where I work directly with business owners to basically do anything we possibly can to get more to their bottom line personally. So if it's, tax breaks, expense reduction, whatever it would possibly take, that's what we do.
Great, thanks for being here. Cammie?
Hey guys, I am Cammie Pride, and I graduated in 2005, originally from Cincinnati, but now live in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, because I've had a couple different career options, but now I finally found my calling in 2013, which is what brought me to Nashville to do grad school. And in 2018, I opened my own private practice, and I do mental health counseling with adult women. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I love your sharing, Cammie, about kind of finding your calling after doing a couple of different things, which I think is so common, and we will dive into that for sure here in a few minutes. But we will just continue kind of round robining it in that order. So our next question, and before we move on into the nitty gritty of what you're going to share, students, please be thinking of questions that you would like to ask our alums. So we'll kind of take a break in between each question just for them to ask anything. So tell us about what you learned, or what was your greatest takeaway from your time at GC that has impacted you the most? Jordan?
Yeah, I think for me, it just comes down to relationships. You take for granted while you're there, at least I did, the opportunity you have to live and be around so many different people in such close relationships. When you leave Georgetown, when you leave school, you never really have that same opportunity again. And so one of the things that has just stuck with me is the opportunity that I had at Georgetown to build relationships with professors. The class sizes are small enough where you can actually get to know the people that you're learning from. I would go out to dinner with professors. I would spend time in their office. And then the same with the people that I lived with in the residence halls, really getting to build deep relationships as you're with them 24/7, basically. So that's been my big takeaway from Georgetown, is just not to take advantage of those relationships you're building there, And then find a way once you leave Georgetown to continue to build on those relationships, to maintain those relationships, and use the skills that you learned at Georgetown to build new relationships when you leave.
Great. And as you mentioned faculty, we do have a faculty member with us today. So thank you, Dr. McKenzie, for joining us. We are so grateful for the impact that faculty have on our students. And I think every single session that we've had, that has been mentioned. So definitely great to hear. What about you, Rob?
Yeah, you know, I have to build a little bit on what Jordan said. I believe Jordan said that he graduated in 21. Can you give me a thumbs up if that's right?
2012.
2012. Okay, sorry, I was getting this little flip side there. So to you all who are graduating soon, you're thinking, wow, 2012, such a long time ago. Well, remember, I graduated in 1994, which means I'm pretty much elderly here. So think about how long that's been. We've had 28 years since I was at Georgetown College. Just this morning, I was talking with one of my good friends from the Georgetown years, who's now one of my best clients. We have another guy who was a PHA brother of mine, who is going to be doing some work for our firm here with his HR business that he started up. We just talked on Tuesday. My dentist is a Georgetown College grad. I mean, there's so many connections that are formed during the time that you are there that you think, oh, no big deal. It's just a buddy, just a pal. But you got to remember each one of those people is going to be going on into a different profession. And if you keep those connections, the way you can continue to work together ends up being able to help form a successful business and a successful future for you as well.
Absolutely. Great takeaway. Thanks for sharing.
And first off, the fact that Dr. McKenzie, I could cry right now that Dr. McKenzie is there. I mean, literally, as I prepared for this, she was written in my notes. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, oh, I just wish I was there in person. I would give you the biggest COVID safe hug ever. But I think for me, Georgetown was incredibly pivotal in my life because it is the place that allowed me to start to figure out who in the world I am as an adult. It allowed me to push and pull and figure out and even sometimes wrestle with, do I still believe what my mom and dad believe? Do I believe what my roommate believes? Do I believe what my professors believe? And everybody, for the most part, was really gracious in letting me figure out who I was in all of that. And I just had the most incredible 4 years at Georgetown, just so much fun, but also, like I said, figuring out my personality and who I was as I was coming into my adult years. So it was just a really special place.
Yes, absolutely.
So Tammy, I have to tell you, you're the reason that I am here. I mean, I'm excited to learn from Jordan and Rob, but I saw your name and I was like, no way am I missing that. So you look the same all these years later, but it was so good to see you.
You're a little grainy, but you look the same too.
I'm grainy.
Okay.
Well, that is just, I mean, gosh, we could go so many directions after that, but I think the connections that people make at Georgetown, building your network, as Rob said, you know, having those relationships with faculty and figuring out who you are, that's so important. So this is my second stint at Georgetown, and I started in 2005 initially, and Cammie was one of the first people that I met. I think she had just graduated and was working in the admissions office, and so I also am so grateful to have these relationships where I get to connect with students that were here kind of in my first round of Georgetown. So we're just, again, so grateful for you all to share your time with us today and expertise. So now we want to hear a little bit about what you've been doing professionally. So you shared kind of what you majored in and a little bit about what you're doing now. But I think so often our students are thinking about what's happening in that life after GC, that first job, the transitions from that job to where you are now. I'd love to hear just a little bit about that. Before we dive in, just want to give our students, anyone have any questions for anyone before we move on? Do you have a question?
Yeah, that's going to be my question.
Oh, well, great. Perfect segue. So the question that she was going to ask was, tell us about your journey. So Jordan, we will start with you. And again, this is probably going to be a little lengthier because we know that most often it is not a linear path. It is a bunch of squiggly lines. And in hindsight, we can see kind of how those squiggly lines make a little bit of sense. So tell us about your journey, Jordan.
Yeah, Faith, you're spot on. If you would have asked me back in 2012, even when I graduated Georgetown, where I would be 10 years later, I wouldn't have described this, right? It's this nonlinear path to get where you are. In Mount Sterling, where I grew up, there are many Georgetown alums. I kind of always had a hunch that I would end up at Georgetown. I kind of grew up hearing about how great it was. Georgetown was the only school I visited. And then, of course, ended up going to Georgetown. I knew I wanted to do something in business, but didn't quite know what that would look like. So I spent a lot of time in business classes and ultimately fell in love with the finance world. Still, there are within finance so many different paths you can take. There are corporate finance paths, there are personal finance paths, there are tax type of paths. So I didn't quite know what that would look like. And so as I left Georgetown, was continuing to look for opportunities and figuring out what exactly I was going to do with this business and finance degree I have now. Ended up coming to Cincinnati and found myself kind of stumbled into a financial planning firm. I was applying to different types of roles. Some were very investment focused, so doing analytical work, trying to analyze investments. Others were a little more relationship oriented, which is this kind of financial planning world that I ended up in. So I stumbled into it, and I'm so thankful that I did. What I love about the financial planning industry is the combination or this marriage of relationship building and this almost the psychology of working with people on a daily basis with the technical side that comes with the numbers, the planning, the spreadsheets, the charts, all that stuff's still there. But at the end of the day, it just comes back to relationships. What I spend my time doing today is really just talking to people about money, answering any money questions they have. And that's everything from, am I going to be okay and able to retire, to I want to send my kids to school. How are we going to come up with a plan to save for that? I want to buy a house. How much house can I afford and how am I going to pay for it? My employer is offering these benefits. I can get life insurance and all this stuff through them. What does that mean for me? And how does this fit together with the rest of my plan? So for me, it's an honor to talk to people about money. In my opinion, it's one of the most intimate and personal things that you can talk about. Most people don't go up to their friend and say, hey, here's my income. Here's what my bank accounts look like. But I get the honor to talk to people about those things that they quite frankly don't talk to anyone else about. So I love the opportunity to build those relationships, help people make progress towards their financial goals, which are ultimately life goals. We say that we do life planning. We're helping people figure out what they want their life to look like and how do we use money and the resources they have to make progress towards the life that they want to achieve. That's a quick summary of what's going on in my professional life today.
Great. Any questions for Jordan about his path or what he does? And our other guests, feel free, if you have comments or questions as well, feel free to chime in. Rob, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. One of the things that of course, my journey is a lot longer. Right when I graduated from Georgetown, I knew exactly what I wanted to be. And if you're thinking it was Vice President of Business Owner Solutions at Wallace Hart Capital Management, no, that was not it. I wanted to be a DJ for a radio station. I wanted to work in radio. I was going to have my voice be the voice for good music in Lexington and all of the areas that I could possibly touch. It would have been wonderful. I had a great connection at Double Q. They were going to end up putting me on. Well, amazingly enough, when you graduate, and I bet this is still the case, and I wonder if Jordan had the same issue since he ended up working in the financial industry, you end up getting a lot of offers to work in commission only type jobs. And when you're working in a commission only type job, you'll be sold the idea of, wow, you can come in and your income is unlimited. Be ready. You can go ahead and let's go ahead and put yourself in debt because that will make you sell harder on whatever you're selling. I end up working in advertising in the beginning and doing some radio ads because I found out that being a DJ at the time didn't really pay all that well, and possibly not even enough to really even support just me, much less an eventual family. So be on the lookout for those jobs because sometimes those can be a little bit hard to do, especially when you're just learning, hey, I'm out of college now. What is my actual work ethic going to be? Are you going to be able to come out of college and say you have no set schedule? You just need to go out and get whatever sales you can, and then that money is going to help you earn a living. So I got out of that and ended up working in the restaurant business. Was quickly pushed into a management role and worked in restaurant management for about 5 years. And that was great. The money was wonderful. But that's another trap that people can get into is the restaurant business will give you more money than you might make doing something different. And you'll be thinking, oh, money is the top most important thing. I can make, gosh, you'll see some of your co-graduates that you know, your friends, and you'll say, man, I'm making double what they're making and I'm working in the restaurant. My future is awesome. But what they don't tell you is you get kind of capped. And then all of your friends are moving past you and having better careers, and you're working from 4 p.m. until 3 in the morning. And your nights off are Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Now, if you're not one of those lucky few that meets your significant other at Georgetown and you have a long, wonderful family life, you may be thinking, hey, you know what the really hot time to be dating is Tuesday and Wednesday nights. Everybody loves to go out on those nights, and that's where you can really meet some great people. Eventually I end up getting into banking from there. It was, to make a long story longer, there was a time where I was actually doing the dishes at Applebee's one night, and a banker was there and said, didn't you graduate from Georgetown College? And I said, yeah. And said, so did you have to learn how to do dishes at Georgetown College? And I said, well, yeah, but at the same time, probably wasn't what I was studying in classes. And they told me about some openings. And I ended up taking a $20,000 a year pay cut to start on the bottom level of banking, and then moved up pretty quickly in the career because, amazingly enough, while restaurant management may have held me back for a little bit as far as career growth goes, it really taught a great work ethic. And if you're willing to make sure that everybody is taken care of and you have great customer service skills, you can go really far in any area of life, whether it's finance or anything else you could possibly think of. Because if you think about it, you're eventually going to be as successful as you make your clients and your customers. And if you push that first, you'll be able to succeed no matter what. I worked in all different forms of banking, from retail banking to commercial lending, did some mortgage, some investment in my time. And like I said, over 22 years of banking, eventually I ended up coming across this career where I was recruited to come join this firm. And to finish up, what I'll say is the way I was recruited, there are some tax breaks that business owners are able to get as part of the CARES Act that not everyone knows about. Ended up one of my good long-term clients, I referred to this firm, and they ended up getting a tax break of $1.4 million that they had no idea was available for them. So the question was, how many more of my 22 years of clients could we help like that? So I was recruited to come join this firm, and I couldn't be happier. Life is easy, and I have basically no stress compared to what I used to do, and it's really nice. So if I was to say, are there any real lessons that I've learned over my career? Number one, don't always go for what's going to pay you the most. go for what's going to end up giving you the most happiness at first, and then try to find out from there how you can be the happiest, and then find out what you can do making the most money while being happy, and what will give you the most freedom to have time to end up spending with your friends, with your family. And eventually that will end up growing to being a good, long, successful career, especially if you end up keeping your client and your customer first.
Great. Thank you so much. What a wonderful journey from DJ to washing dishes to what you're doing now, and all of the things in between. And again, just that power of connecting with people as you were washing dishes at Applebee's, and how important that connection was to your future. Any questions for Rob? Just a reminder, did you say you were a communication major?
I was a communication arts major. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect.
And that was one of those things where this will be good for all the students to hear. I was going to be a business administration major, and then I found out how tough microeconomics was. And since I had to take microeconomics in a summer at NKU, since there was a teacher that I won't name that I'm sure has got to be retired by now, who ended up, I believe, failing about 75% of the class. Yeah, macro was much better for me, but micro ended up being a little bit tough. So that ended up convincing me to be a communications major at that point.
Well, as a fellow communications major myself, I share that kindred spirit, and also know about the transferable skills that you learn in those types of majors, where you're able to really utilize those in so many different industries. So I think that's definitely an important takeaway. So thank you. Any questions for Rob before we move on to Cammie? Yes, Sydney?
Mine's kind of a question, but not really. But I'm a business administration major.
Nice.
And communication minor. And so you just saying that makes me think, and I haven't even taken micro or macro yet. I'm taking that next semester, and now I'm like reevaluating micro.
Well, I'll tell you, for me, I'm really jealous of you all, because for one, we didn't really have a career type helping area at Georgetown when I was there. We had, your class advisors and our professors, and they may have been able to help out a little bit, but what you all are doing right now, we didn't have that opportunity. We had no help, no assistance of, well, what am I going to do now? I had no idea. But I'm assuming that the economics professors are all very nice and very helpful now at Georgetown. So I don't think you have anything to worry about.
Great. Anyone else? Cammie, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, for me, I actually, when I was thinking about this, mine actually feels like it does start at Georgetown, because I was actually an elementary ed major until the middle of my junior year. And in the middle of my junior year, it hit me like a 2x4. I don't think this is right for me. And so that was probably one of the first major decisions where I had to really listen to my gut. And I think that's where I learned to trust my gut. And that's when I moved from elementary ed over to communication. And I literally remember George McGee. Is George McGee still there at Georgetown? No, oh gosh. But I went and told him, and he had a mini fridge, and he was like, we have to celebrate. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this man gonna open champagne or something? No, he pulled out a can of like Sprite or 7-Up, and we literally like toasted to me coming over to communications. And it was one of the best moves that I made. For me, it just was a much better fit. And I'm so glad, as scary as that was in the middle of my junior year to make, thinking I only have a year and a half left. Like, how am I going to do this? I'm so glad I did it, because even now, how many ever years ago I graduated, almost 40 at this point, 40 years old at this point, it still serves me in so many great opportunities. And as I said, I haven't had this like Jordan and Rob, I haven't had this real linear career path that I think I thought I was going to have when I was like a freshman or sophomore in college. You know, and so when I graduated, I was really lucky to be an admissions counselor for Georgetown, which I adored. I loved promoting Georgetown all over the country and getting students to come to Georgetown. I just was so passionate, still am, about Georgetown. And so I did that for a little bit. Was in a relationship with someone and made the move to Indiana. And at that point, that's when I was really humbled, to be honest, in my professional life, because I really struggled to find work that I was excited about and that I even wanted to do, that I had to take a lot of jobs that just truly paid the bills, and that's it. And it was humbling for me because I had big, exciting dreams, and none of them included doing temp jobs with data entry. And it was awful. And they were long days. I did like other like administrative type roles that other people may be like really good at, but just wasn't, you know, fulfilling for me. And so it was in 2012 where I just was like, I literally cannot do any more data entry. I was like, my eyes are crossed. And I was fortunate where I could go home for lunch every day, where the office I worked. And I remember coming home, my husband happened to be there that same day. And I have no idea where it came from, but I just looked at him like crying in tears, because like, I can't do these stupid numbers anymore. God bless you, Jordan and Rob, for doing numbers. And I said, maybe I should be a therapist. And Greg, my husband, in his wonderfulness, was like, absolutely, that is absolutely what you're supposed to do. And from there, very, very rapidly, I got ready for the GRE. We sold our home. We searched all over the US, because at that point we didn't have children and we had so much flexibility. And that's where we landed in Nashville. And I am in my professional life, I am exactly where God wants me to be. And it is very fulfilling work. And honestly, I'm really glad that the counseling part didn't come until later, because I would not have been ready to sit with people who are going through significant things. And so it happened at just the right time. You know, it was frustrating that 10 years later, after Georgetown, I didn't find my calling, but like God in his providence knew, like, I wasn't ready at 23 years old to be sitting with women going through trauma, grief, depression, whatever it may be. And so it worked out just as it was supposed to work out. So.
Thank you for sharing that, Kimmy. That's such powerful and helpful advice for all of us in the room as we're thinking about kind of what it is that we're called to do. And I think sometimes it's also really helpful for our students to hear that sometimes you're not going to like hit a home run with every job you have, and that you're going to have opportunities that you're doing just because that's what you need to do in that season, but that you're learning along the way the skills you need to then maybe go into the area that you're meant to be into. Any questions for Tammy?
Question for the three of you?
Yeah. Can you all hear her okay?
Can she speak up just a little bit?
Yeah, you might have to stand up so they can see you also. Sorry, I know it's maybe hard to know where to look at in the room.
Okay, so I'm a sophomore and I haven't done any internships or anything yet. So I don't really have any professional work experience like with my major or anything. So I was just wondering, I know we learned from all of our like major classes at GC, but I wondered what it was like to learn with the job, because like there are specific things that you need to know for each like the specific job that you're going into. So I wanted to know what that process was like. Please.
That's a really great question. I missed your name. What was it?
Kylie.
Kylie, yeah, that's a really great question. I just think that you just get so much hands-on learning that you can't learn in class. Like, you're learning valuable things in class, but you are learning in real time how to cope with a particular issue that comes up, and you are watching the people that are ahead of you do it in real time and how to cope with it, how to manage it, you know, how to not let it consume you, how to take it in strides, like all those different things. And so I'd say as many internship jobs, like all that stuff, like it'll all benefit you greatly.
For anyone who was not in Tammy's area, as far as the profession you're looking to do, I did an internship with a television station where I was put in charge of a kids club. So try to imagine if you're in charge of the Star 64 television station kids club in Cincinnati, what's that going to do for your future as far as what are you going to learn? What are you going to know about how that's going to end up really affecting your career in finance? Not a lot, but one of the things that I learned, it ended up being a lot of work ethic, a lot of connection building, again, because the connections that you end up using, not only from your Georgetown time, but from, say, internships. For example, our firm offers internships. Everybody, anywhere where you're looking to intern with, I would think that one of your goals should be, how can I get the best possible connections to where these people would be willing to stand up for me and say, I would be a reference for you when you're going in for your next job or your first job out of college. Because that can be one of the tough things when you're putting out your resume. They'll say, well, who are your 4 references? I don't know, my mom, one of my buddies that I know, or, you know, I worked at Wendy's. You know, it's better to have professional references who can speak on your character and your work ethic and say, I would put my personal name on this student who is graduating. I know they'll do a great job for you. And that ends up really setting you apart from other people.
Yeah, I'll add to this a little bit. I spent my senior year at Georgetown in an internship, and I wish I would have done more, quite frankly. Even if it weren't internships in the years prior to my senior year, doing more shadowing, spending a day with someone, just understanding what they do, it helps you just understand what careers are out there. You know, I remember thinking, wow, I didn't even know some of these things I'm hearing people do were options, or that these were jobs. So the more you can put yourself out there, get to know what career paths are available, it just opens doors for what you could do in the future.
Great advice for everyone here, and I did not pay any of them to mention experiential learning opportunities like internships, but that is certainly something that we encourage you to think about over the summer. You know, if you're home, like Jordan said, you know, just job shadow someone for a day, see what a day in the life of someone who works in the financial industry or another industry that you're considering. I think we have enough time. I'm going to toss a question out that some of you have touched on. It's just kind of that integration between the personal and professional. We know that it is not always balanced, where we can only think about work in certain hours and only think about home life and other areas. But any thoughts or insight, advice about kind of how you integrate those two things that you've learned in your journey?
Well, and if no one else will speak up, I'll always talk. For me, one of the things, and it kind of goes along with this, but not really, and I wanted to make sure that I did cover it with you all, is personal debt. Make sure you don't get into a bunch of dumb personal debt when you get out of Georgetown. Because you'll find there are plenty of places, plenty of people who will be willing to give you a credit card, willing to say, why don't you go ahead and buy a little bit nicer of a car than what you really deserve at this time? Why do you need to go ahead and struggle at all? Hey, you could go out to eat every night. There's nothing stopping you. Personal debt, especially when you're first starting out, don't let it happen, because that can end up affecting you for the rest of your life, including when you're talking about personal life versus professional life.
Great advice.
I know for
I
me,
completely just took everything over. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh.
I know for me, especially in the line of work that I do, which can be very heavy on some days. It can be very tricky to leave, my client who's just explained, something incredibly tragic or an awful trauma that they have just encountered. And that's why the internships were so pivotal for me, is because that's where I started to learn from people who were 5, 10, 20 years into this field that I'm in, where they could literally show me very, very practical ways of how to separate this wild and incredible job that we do as therapists, and then get to go home and recharge and be with my family, be with my friends, that sort of thing. And so some days you are going to like get it right with your balance. Some months are you'll do great with that. And then other times you won't. And that's when you start to notice it's out of whack. That's when you get really honest with yourself, or if you have a partner in your life or whatever it may be, and look at what differences need to be made. Does that mean that I'm not going to answer email after a certain point? Does that mean that I won't work weekends? Does that mean I am willing to work one weekend a month, whatever it may be? But just learning what boundaries that you need for yourself and for your family, because it is tricky. It is tricky to figure it out, because just in our culture, work wants you all the time, and we all could work incredible hours. But it's, anytime I've fallen into that groove, it's exhausting and it's very depleting. And I'm just grateful to have people around me that can reflect and say, hey, like, what's really going on, and do some shifts need to happen.
Yeah, Cami, I can completely relate. There are times where I'm laying in bed at night thinking about other people's money. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be thinking about other people's money right now. I really care about my clients and want the best for them, but I'm trying to go to bed. I've been working from home mainly for the past couple of years, since the start of COVID, and came into your point, you have to find these ways to separate and find that balance. So I've done things like turn all my notifications off, at 5 o'clock every day. Really don't work on the weekends at all. You have to have those boundaries, and strive to find an organization that values that, all. Luckily and thankfully, I work for a great company who doesn't want me working in the evenings. They don't want me working on the weekends. Of course, there are periods or seasons where things are crazy, and it's going to happen a little bit, and that's okay. But for me, I've identified that my family, I've got a young son. That's my number one priority and values right now. So I've made it clear to everyone around me that, yeah, I'm going to do great work while I'm at work, but there are limits, and I'm going to focus on my family.
Thank you all for sharing. Any questions for our guests today? I know Ms. Olivia Coleman-Dunn probably has a question she would like to ask you, but anything before I turn it over to her?
Well, I just want to say to you all are phenomenal. I mean, I am so energized and excited. I mean, this has been a wonderful edition of our hashtag Career series. So thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Kenny. Rob, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I think it's very neat that you were a DJ and wanted to get into that. Originally, DJ Rob on the ones and twos. I can see it, brother. So that's awesome.
If you don't mind me saying, WRVG was a beautiful thing.
We're gonna have to have that. We're gonna have to talk to the current faculty member who oversees that. She's actually a Georgetown alum, so we'll have to talk to her about having you back sometime. Cami, I know you and I got to meet each other back in September at the Nashville Alumni Event, and you were a gem. So good to see you. And Jordan, you and I haven't talked as of late. I'm looking forward to getting to know you. We'll definitely have to have you back on campus sometime, you and your family. But you all have been incredible, so thank you so much. And students, I hope that you all are energized as much as I am But anytime we speak to alum, either virtually or in person, I do like to ask one question. And that is, what is your favorite Georgetown story or favorite Georgetown memory that you feel is appropriate to share? I do add that caveat. Hey, we're open to anything you want to share, but obviously we want to make sure that you feel it's appropriate. But I would love for you all to channel back to your Georgetown memories and tell us what your favorite moment or story was.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I think one for me is, it's not a one-time event, but it would happen almost every single day, is a friend of mine who lived down the hall every day at noon or 11:45 or something like that. When he was about to go to the cafeteria, he would walk out in the hallway and yell, "Caf time!" And then people would start flooding out of their rooms. And every day there would just be a mass exodus of us that walked to the caf for caf time. So when I think of Georgetown, I just think of him walking out of his room yelling that.
Caf time. I love it. I love it. Well, we have a brand new renovated cafeteria. So make sure you tell him that caf time is pretty nice now. That's good stuff.
You know, for me, it's hard to say just one memory, because I mean, 4 great years. Cammie was talking about George McGee. He was awesome. That guy was great. I mean, if he's not around still on campus, sorry, because you all have missed out on that one. I mean, communications, Margaret Reynolds was an incredible influence on me in her classes. And I still think about things to this day that she taught. But to me, the best thing about being at Georgetown was just when you're walking around, whether you're going to class, going to the caf. I know the grill doesn't exist anymore, but whether I was going to the grill or playing volleyball, whatever, everyone you saw, you were saying hi to. You knew everybody. It doesn't turn out like that in the real world. When you're walking around on a street of whatever city you're in, you don't automatically have that connection with someone of, oh yeah, we're in classes together, or we're in the same place, I know that guy, or anything like that. So it's amazing to have that one spot where, forgive me for being too pie in the sky, but the feeling of love that you have every day, that there's always someone there who's going to care about the slightest thing that's going on with your life. And if you've got nothing else going on, you can always grab someone, play ping pong, basketball, whatever. You always have something that you could be doing to pass the time or get over whatever is bothering you at that time. Where Cammie was talking about, you know, when you've got pressures in life, what are you going to do? Because if I have pressures at work and I need to get away from it, I'm going home and I've got a son who's going to need 100% of my attention. My wife's going to have issues that she's been dealing with, and she's got a much more important job than I have. She's the director of the Office of Homeless Prevention and Intervention in Lexington. So she helps the homeless. My gosh, that's a little bit more important than what I do, where I'm helping business owners make money. So think about taking advantage of all of that time that you've got while you're there. Just keep those connections strong and make them as strong as possible, and keep them going after you leave, because those are the connections that will really help you out as far as that whole work-life balance, because those are people that'll care about you still, that you can call and you can end up saying, hey, this is going on, let's talk.
Thank you, Rob. And I do want to say, Ms. Margaret Reynolds, she'll be receiving an honorary doctorate from the college in the next 2 months or so. She's definitely someone who's a rich Georgetown treasure. So I definitely want to.
Well deserved.
Absolutely. So maybe you can join us for that.
Love to.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least,
please tell me that you guys still do Grub Fest.
Well,
there was one 2 years ago. I remember that.
Yes, COVID has impacted.
Well, sure. Yes.
Yeah. Now it's still done, Cammie. still done, but it's a little bit different than how it was when we were here, but it is still done. Now, I don't know if it's as, well, go ahead, share. Go ahead.
I mean, GrubFest was my absolute favorite. I still tell complete strangers about it today because I still have scars on my like knees and shins from, I mean, it was incredible, fun, so disgusting. But it's what you do in college. I would never do that now. Never. But I loved it. I loved Songfest. And I'm not just saying this, Dr. McKenzie's classes, I still can watch different clips on different shows and be like, oh, Dr. McKenzie would totally show that clip to get this point across, this thing. And my husband, who did not go to Georgetown, is like, what? And I'm like, just trust me. This Law and Order clip would really bring home the point. But yeah, I had a blast at Georgetown. So many great memories. And I echo what Rob was saying, just like, do it all. I mean, you think you're busy now, and you are busy, but it is a good busy. It is a good busy. And so just soak every bit of it up, because it's just different after undergrad. It's just different. So.
Well, thank you all. And I do like to say thank you. I thank our alums for giving your time, talent, and treasure to Georgetown. And a lot of times we do equate treasure with money. And we like that too at Georgetown. But what you're giving right now, this is your treasure, truly. And I appreciate it. I am energized. I feel good. And you all got me in a good place on this wonderful Friday Eve. So thank you all. And it's so good to see you guys.
Thank you, Olivia, for joining us. We appreciate you and all that you do to connect us with our alums and support them. So any other questions from our students? Dr. McKenzie, you have anything you want to say before we adjourn for today?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate their thanks as well. It's so nice when people feel, as positively as you all do towards Georgetown, that you're willing to give of your time, because that really is just so important for our students. And it's just so good to get you, Cammie, to see your face. And I think